Folks, for day 2, what we're going to do is we're going to make an extra copy of our marker background, and we do that by right-clicking and choosing duplicate, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Control J. Now, Control J is a great one to know. What we're going to do with that is I'm going to hit Control minus a few times to zoom out, and I want to hold the Alt key so I can drag the corners out and scale this up a bunch, because I want this to be a little larger. Now I could pick a more interesting part of the composition if I wanted to recenter it. Maybe I want this part to be shown off inside the body. All right, now we're going to add a layer mask. So I'm going to hide the other layers so you can see what's happening. All right, we are going to add a layer mask to this image. Now, one thing that you may want to do is use what you know about the selection tools. You remember we use the magic wand, the quick selection, and the object selection tools fairly frequently. I'm going to try the quick selection tool, and I'm just going to paint inside the area of my image. Now I grabbed everything. Let me turn on the white background and see if it will work a little bit better. There we go. Now it's just grabbing out to the border of the black lines. So I'm just kind of painting over my face. I may miss some spots, but I can fix that later on. I'm going to hit the layer mask button. Looks like the Japanese flag. I hit that, and then I can see where my image is showing and where it is not. I have a tiny gap here where my picture is not quite large enough, and it looks like my ear, there's some gaps in there, right? So if I hide everything, you can see there's some little gaps. So first I'll go to the mask layer and click on it. Press B for brush. Now that should allow me to paint white over top of any of these little gaps to make sure that those areas get filled in properly, so there won't be any like holes in my face showing through to the other background. What we end up with is actually a pretty cool looking image. All right, got to get the ear. We'll paint up to the edge on the ear. Now theoretically you could straight up erase what you have. I don't want to just erase what I have because that doesn't let me go back and fix it. For instance, if I erased the pixels from the mask and I'm missing a big part of the forehead, I can just switch back to the brush and repaint that visibility. Whereas if I were erasing from the actual image layer rather than the mask, those pixels are gone for good. So that's something that's going to make things a little easier going forward. So I have a big version in front and a smaller version in the background. Now I can hit this little chain link, click on my background layer, press Control T, and I can scale it up even further if I want and move it around. All right, whatever you think ends up looking coolest for you. The only other thing that I'm going to add is I'm going to go to blending options and I'm going to ask for a drop shadow, because this layer will look really cool if I put just kind of a drop shadow off to one side or another. You can adjust the distance and the size and the spread and the opacity to your heart's content. We just want to have a little bit of a drop shadow here to help separate the larger pattern version of ourself from the smaller pattern version of the background. All right, so when you're done, you're going to do File, Save As. Okay, we want to save it not on the computer, but save it to the cloud. And I'll call this Portrait with Masked Background. Good enough. Something along those lines. Spelling is not super important. Making sure that you name things with a name that makes sense, that is very important, because as we start to build more and more files over the course of the school year, you don't want everything to be named with a strange or confusing name, because it'll be hard to tell which files contain which works of art. Then finally we'll do export as. All right, it's exporting as a JPEG. That's fine. You could also do a PNG. I'll take it to my desktop. All right, portrait with masked background. Great. And that's that, gang. Keep up the good work.